With its lush green landscape, modern buildings, and efficient public transit, Singapore looks like a city that's environmentally conscious. But in reality, Singapore lags behind many of its neighbors on most measures of sustainability.
We've done a lot of research in this area in the past. We did a study of 3,500 companies globally in 2010, and Singapore came bottom of that, with only 7% of the top 100 companies actually producing any kind of sustainability report.
But just defining sustainability is problematic. There are dozens of definitions and no agreed upon standard.
Now, I had my research assistants go out and start collecting definitions of sustainability from the academic literature, which tends to be fairly rigorous in the way it uses terms. I stopped them when they reached 30 different definitions for sustainability. The earliest definitions focused on the environment. The later definitions started to incorporate more social dimensions. And it's eventually evolved into what are known as the 3 E's: environment, social equity, and economics.
Measuring sustainability is also tricky. At a forum hosted by the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants and NUS's Center for Governance, Institutions and Organizations, academics and industry leaders discussed whether Singapore should have an index to measure sustainability. But indexes are controversial. There are several of them at both the national and corporate level, and there is no consensus on which ones are best. But most at the forum agreed before an index is introduced, much more needs to be done to educate companies on how investments in green alternatives today will pay off tomorrow.
The issue is that when companies consider taking new actions related to sustainability, they oftentimes feel those upfront costs today, even though they may be getting substantial returns in the long run. The trouble is that oftentimes those returns in the long run are a bit more speculative than the absolutely certain costs today. And especially in difficult financial times, they will have trouble justifying the immediate costs when they're just struggling for survival.
For those companies willing to implement environmental policies, the paybacks include cost savings from reduced garbage removal, lower fuel costs due to reduced consumption, which also reduces a company's carbon footprint, and then there are the more speculative benefits. If the cost of fuel and water go up and a company has already cut back on those resources, it will be ahead of the competition. And the situation is even more pressing for companies operating in Singapore.
There are no natural resources here. Most of the things that we need in terms of input along the supply chain come from somewhere else. That's where a lot of the issues are going to come from. You need to have a strategy as part of as a company to deal with that in the future, whether it's climate change, whether it's urbanization, whether it's transport costs. All those things are going to affect the way that we do business, and I don't think people are really looking at that right now.
Young people are also forcing companies to implement socially responsible policies, something the corporate world is slowly adapting to.
I've been utterly amazed. Honestly, it is beyond my ability to comprehend that when I go into universities to try and recruit people, the 20-year-olds just want to talk about sustainability. And to Thomas's point about incentives, I think we would all agree that we're all in a war for talent, whatever business that we're in. So there is an immediate incentive there that if you can have a dialogue with employees, young and particularly young employees, about how sustainable your business model is, I think you'll find it easier to attract great talent.
Attracting great talent takes investment and commitment, and if Singapore wants to get on board the sustainability movement, it better move quickly, as the country is already lagging behind its neighbors. For NUS Business School, I'm Marissa Thomas.